Also, what is it?
Well, here we are, gentlemen. I'm here at the historic Cheesemaking Center. We're going to do a little interviewing here, and Dr. Heiar is going to record this or video it, and we're going to audio it here. And today is November 19th, 1996. We're down here what they call the Nishula, or the little wine room, Turner Hall, Monroe, Wisconsin. We're going to talk a little about what old times, right? Starting with my left over here, we got Ken Woldt, Heiar, Norm Wood. And, I've known all of you for quite a while. I want to thank you all for coming. Going to bring back a lot of memories here. Now, if you got any real human interest stories that will kind of enhance this or embellish this conversation a little also, okay?
Well, I've known you, John, for 30 years. When I went to work for Marshall, when I first knew you, probably in the plant.
And what is Marshall's?
Marshall's?
Yes.
Well, back then it was strictly pretty much a culture house at that time, selling calf rennet, and then they got into culture and started meat business. And of course, I got a great break because I got a chance to replace Walter Burkhardt on the road. And of course, Walter worked for Marshall for 35 years, and everybody down here in Monroe knows Walter Burkhardt. And he was quite an active follower.
Well, we're on Walter and I had already help get in this conversation a little bit too, you know what I'm saying. And Walter used to call on my father back in the 20s and 30s. And he was telling me at that time, he'd always bring a few pencils. He'd talk to the boss. He'd talk to the boss. They always had a few pencils or a pack of cigarettes maybe for the hired men, but he made sure that the boss was the center of his intentions. And then he said to me, at my family, he stayed there 2-3 days and helped make cheese. He brought his overalls and pail and whatever it is in it. And of course, at that time, they only sold rennet, right? Mm-hmm. Rennet and color, maybe, you know, color also. I don't think there was anything else, was there?
Not back when Walter started.
No.
You know, because the cultures of that time had not started.
They didn't really get into cultures until shortly before I came in 1966.
Yeah, it was really rennet. And what other companies sold rennet that you can think of?
Oh, Hanson, Chris Hanson, I was raised on Milwaukee, and at that time I think it was Darrell Laboratories out of Waukesha.
Right, and going back before that, you remember this, John, sure, it was Paul Lewis, who was bought out by Pfizer.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we were pretty well Marshall and kind of married to Walter, of course, then the Yodel, he did Yodel, really good too.
Oh, sure.
And he painted the Wood Andrews factory, which is right there, Warren of the State Mine there, where Zimmerman's were at for a while. Well, now, Don, you sell rennet now, or anything, or cultures in your business now?
We sure do. We used to sell the Marshall, the Hanson, and the Pfizer equipment for the customers, and we sold the media too.
Well, then, and how do you sell it now? Who do you work for? Or?
I work for Nelson Jameson on Marshall.
And they are a distributing company, right?
That's right. We don't manufacture anything, we just distribute.
And what area do you cover?
Well, now we cover the United States.
Is that right?
Because we have a warehouse in California. Myself, I'm mostly in southern Wisconsin, and that's about it. I don't go outside of that. Although I can't go any place, because I'm retired and we're just with them as a part-time PR guy.
All right, well, now we kind of got a little background, and I'm going to take you individually here. We're talking a few things about you separately. Ken, where were you born?
I was born and raised in South Dakota.
Oh, I see. And how did you come into the dairy business? Were you raised in a small town?
Well, what happened, John, I got called into service during the Korean War, and when I got out of service, I got the GI Bill, so I went to South Dakota State University and took a dairy course, graduated in '56. At that time, I was hired by Armour & Company, and I worked for Armour & Company 10 years, working in Minnesota, lived in St. Paul, Minnesota, and bought butter powder for them for that time. And then later I got transferred to the Armour cheese plant in Portage.
You was talking about butter powder. What do you mean? What did you do there at Armour?
Well, I went out to different butter plants and bought butter that was packaged in 64-pound blocks,
Which they call the bulk, more or less.
bulk butter, and it was brought into the plant in St. Paul, and there it was put into augers, and from there it went into quarter-pound pieces, full-pound pieces. Some of it was in parchment, some of it was in foil wrap, and that was the way it was sold.
You know, it's amazing how things have changed. You know, I remember, you know, we used to get butter sometimes with a cart and sometimes not. At the end of the day, by batching, you know, when people show me the recipe, but they even got these quarter pounders where a teaspoon is this much on the wrapper. I thought,
Yeah.
They even old John here could figure out the measuring of the teaspoons. Well, that's quite interesting. And then the buttermilk, what did they do with the buttermilk in these plants?
Well, of course, the cream went to make the butter, and of course the skim went to make dry powder, and then
This is from the milk. The
Right.
cream from the milk,
Right.
the butter, and
Right.
the dry skim.
then the buttermilk was usually just run over roll dryers and sold for animal feed.
Well, Ken, you was telling, or Norm, you was saying that you were at Pabst Farms there too?
Mm-hmm.
And your background is, where were you born?
I was born in, basically, I was born in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. My dad had worked for a dairy down in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And of course, he was the third generation in the dairy background. And I don't remember exactly what the name of the company was down there in Elkhorn, but he had moved to Oconomowoc from the Pabst family, in which they were swinging from their home estate from raising horses into raising purebred Holsteins. And they had a chance to expand their dairy facilities in Oconomowoc, and they needed a field man to take on additional patron now. And Dad got his start up there. In fact, his father and his brother also came up from an East Troy area, Wisconsin, and joined the Pabst family and starting this, should we say, enterprising aspect of it.
Now, the Pabst family, if I know the name, Pabst always associated me with the Milwaukee Brewery.
That's right.
Is that the same Pabst family?
It is the same Pabst family. Fred Pabst, main estate is down on Oconomowoc Lake. And as I said, he started that raising purebred horses, and he finally wanted to get into a little more of the dairy cattle. And so he started having this estate out there. As it progressed, John, I don't want to get too far in advance.
But what I want to do is like you worked there at Commonwealth plant and the one at Violi both,
Both. As I grew up, yes.
and then you ended up managing, did you say?
Well, my father was one that managed the one at Oconomowoc, and him and David Pabst were the one that inspired the purchase of another plant just south of Madison at Peoria, Wisconsin. And after obtaining this plant in 1965, my dad died in '69, and a gentleman by the name of Earl Jansen, who was managing that particular plant at the time, asked if I'd be interested in getting back into the dairy business. And that's after I'd gone to school and wound up down in Peoria, Illinois, being a salesman for Pfizer, selling infant formulas, which is another story, but I chose to come back and get into the dairy business again. And I did manage the plant at Peoria for a while.
And there where they were starting to sell fluid milk on,
Yes.
on an open market, which was a new phase. And what was what time frame are we talking about?
Well, this was back in the early, 1969 through 75. They were qualifying milk through Chicago order. They call it Federal Order 30 at that particular time.
Where the milk had to be sold to the federal order, and then the federal order sold it back to the cheese factory or to the bottler.
Right. Or big candy companies like or M&M.
But there was a new thing in grade A where you had these federal orders, and someday maybe we'll explore that. But it's kind of complicated where you have to qualify in order to get in this federal order, and then they kind of distributed the milk around, and it had to be grade A plus. You had to have certain disqualifying, which meant all the milk a certain percent here, all the milk a certain percent there, and so on. which really kept your mind going, right?
Well, it was an accounting nightmare. I always thought it was, and I'm glad you're not asking me how to define it, John. I really don't want to be put in that position to define it, because I remember my father having to, a few nights of restlessness, wondering how he was going to go out and wonder what prices he was going to have to pay for the farmers at this time. But it did. It was a nightmare. Even though the agency itself thought it was easy for the farmer to be paid on this particular basis, it was a way by which to qualify bounding knowledge.
Well, we will get Jensen and maybe somebody from the federal order, we'll explore that aspect of it, that division. All right, I'm going to stick on this here, beans or bolts from Marshall. So you've got a background, and both of you, and you came with Marshall, Ken?
1966.
1966. And they were just starting to get in with the cultures at that time?
They were getting in with cultures and their Marstar starter media. Because at that time, back in...
Explain what Marstar is now.
Marstar is a starter media that inhibits the growth of bacteriophage. And back in the early 60s, bacteriophage was a terrible problem in the cheese industry. And a fellow by the name of Art Jepson, who ran Black River, or the organic co-op at Black Creek, Wisconsin, came in to Marshall and said, this was about 1963, you people have to come up with something so that we can make cheese out here. All of our starters are going dead, and we're not able to make cheese. And that brought on the working with Marstar, developing it, and I think it was 1964 they took it into one of the first plants. I believe it was Alto Co-op.
And what can you remember about Marstar?
Well, basically,
or when did you come into the company?
I came into the company in September of 1970. It was 3 years after Ken had done it. I went into the technical aspect of technical service, being Marshall's, I think, first technical service man at that time, if I remember. And helped Mr. Rasmussen, Harold Rasmussen at that time, develop not only some of the mesophilic cultures, the cheddar cheese culture medias, but also the thermophilic for the Italian area, because the Italian areas were basically suffering the same problems as the cheddar industry. And he developed a media that basically was used to convert, or starting to convert, the Italian industry off the whey starters to commercial starters. And this was the benefit of that.
What you're saying is, are you saying that you went out to these factories and you got different whey starters from all different places, and then you turned around and developed a new type, or how do you start with this anti-polish here? But first off, Ken, you're an old cheesemaker. Do you know what polish is? Huh?
It kills the starter.
Yeah.
It's dirt.
Well, I didn't know you said it was much at the factory, but
But John, to answer your question, really, one of the first starters that Marshall ever picked up was from Vince Thompson out there. And what they did, John, they took that starter and they transferred it through Marstar so many times that there was no chance there'd be any bacteriophage in that starter. And once they developed that, they gave it the name VT3, which stood for Vince Thompson. And that was I think, one of their first starters.
Okay,
and that's how they did that. They went out into the field. And Norm picked some of these up.
Yeah. I remember coming to our factory,
Right,
and,
right.
Picked it up, and
Sure.
and I thought we lost the art. We lost the art of carrying our own starter, and for each one to kind of build against this foreign bacteria, if I might say. And mesophages, it's something in the air like staph in a hospital. Should I describe it as such? And to give you an example here, I'll tell you, I don't know where it came from, but we had the starter tank here, which was cool, Marshall's. And over here we had the bone milk. And we made vats. At that time we had 4 vats. And we took the culture, which was cool, the milk was cool, so there wasn't nothing active in those 2 tanks to speak of. We made vats 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we went through the second 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we hit the 9th one, it slowed up. The 10th one, not only slowed, it practically stopped. And I think the limit at that time it was 11. The 11th one we made the next day. And it's like yeast in bread. All at once the yeast quit working and we just couldn't get that. So the following day, then we thought, well, maybe that's it. The following day, the same sequence or same scenario came about. We got up after the first 8 vats, and of course we washed each vat with disinfect, so we weren't carrying it the second time around. But something as a phage, as you take in this case. The only thing, and then of course right away we call up Marshall, and they said, "We'll send you something, or send somebody up, and we've got a new medium starter that is strong enough that will offset that or override it." And that's what we did. I always was wondering what really caused it. Was a farmer spraying something at a certain time of day where the air came in? Or, this was a hypothetical thing, but we all blamed it on anyhow, we would like to find out. But they were bulldozing an old cheese factory, and they were putting all the fill down below where we built the intake. Well, there was still something in that, all them pipes and all that floor or whatnot that was still could cause that phage. I'll never know, but thank God for Marshall.
John, the term has been used that bacteriophage is the best hitchhiker in the world because it would travel from plant to plant, and like you say, just moving certain things would stir it up, and it was a very serious problem back in the early '60s.
Well, you remember that years ago, I don't know with you, but I can add to this. We exchanged cultures, something, started, if something went wrong or something happened, or maybe made a mistake, or you got a bad batch, well, then you went to the neighboring factory, and you picked up some new culture, and then you started over, whatever it is. And of course, then as this Marshall came along, and Pfizer's, and who else got his cultures, though, back in the 70s? Hansen, were they?
Chris Hansen.
Did they start right away? And Dietrich?
Oh yeah, they had good culture.
Dietrich, I don't think came in until the middle 70s.
Yeah, he was late.
Yeah, he was late.
Well, anyhow, as the plants came about to where, what I'm looking for my side of our area, where they, all at once, this factory went strictly with Marshall, and this factory, which the cultures are frozen, and all at once, there wasn't a factory you could borrow from anymore. and then, of course, we had these salesmen from Nelson Jameson and Reggets, and when you, let's get a little your aspect, or your little side of this here, start a business and selling here.
We didn't sell culture, we did sell the media. We never got into the frozen culture.
Okay, can you explain what the media is?
Probably milk powder and the whey powder that mix together.
That you mix together with the culture.
The culture to make you start again.
So you take the process, Norm, how do you do this now? You take the culture and this media and water, kind of give us just a kind of rundown, and if you can think of something else, Ken, between the two Marshall boys here.
Sure. Basically, when you make up your media formulation, you make it up to a particular amount of solids, depending upon the type of media it is, whether it be an 8 or a 10 or 11% solids mixture. And mix it up with water. You heat it for about 45 minutes, or up to at least 190 degrees to sterilize it. You hold it there, say, for 45 minutes, and you bring it down to your setting temperature, whether it's mesophilic, be down in the low 70s, or thermophilic, which would be up around 100 to 110. At that point, you let it ripen out, and you cool it according to
These words that you're using are types of bacteria.
Yes, mesophilic, when I say mesophilic, the low temperature means it's cheddar cheese, Colby, and that area type of thing. Thermophilic is the high temperature organisms that are basically used with Swiss, Italian cheese jelly, and so on.
It's like as mesophilic, you can't heat the product as high.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
What would you say the range for that would be, just to
Mesophilic, you don't want to go over 102 degrees. And
for
for
making
cooks,
the cheese, cooking the cheese?
yes, cooking the good cheese. And the thermophilic, they cook all the way up to 122 degrees, like the Parmesans and even hotter. So the Swiss, your natural Swiss.
Yes, and that's what we use.
Sure,
Swiss and also Italian.
John, back in when I first started in '66, of course, there were many cheese factories that still made their starter in cans. They didn't have bulk starter tanks. So Marshall put up Marstar in 8 3/4 pound bag. where the cheesemaker could put 75 gallons of water in that can, stir in 8 3/4 pounds of Mars Star, and cook it up, and then they had their starter, rather than having to weigh it out of 50-pound bags.
Is that right? Of course, we were making much cheddar at that time. I mean, I think cheddar, but,
Don sold a lot of that, coming in a box.
is that right?
Yeah,
We sold stainless steel cans. So.
yeah.
Amazing, I just looking at the price of the stainless steel can, and back then you could buy one for about $15, $20, and now they're about $175 just for one stainless steel can.
I bet you remember the day, Ken will bring this back, is when we first came out with the frozen cultures, we did not have cans of cultures, we had vials. And these little vials, 1cc vials, were used or given to the cheesemaker to transfer on a system, where he would take it and transfer it on a daily basis or on a fresh basis. But the thing that was amazing about it is these little vials couldn't be sent in the mail. They had to find some way in which they were still frozen and perishable to get it to the cheeseman. And so we got ourselves involved with ABS, American Breeder Service, to have them put into these liquid nitrogen canisters, but they would have both Siemens in, and they would go ahead and basically deliver the cultures along the route where they would deliver Siemens. So we had a conjunction, or a joint venture with them getting these cheese.
And that was transported at what temperature?
At liquid nitrogen, I think is 320 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
But it gives you an idea.
I just wanted to bring that in. I used to think that if it was frozen, how can any microorganisms even grow? But I guess even on the glaciers over there in
Oh, yes.
Switzerland, you can get
It's
something
true.
and get something and start it to grow again or preserve it.
See, John, these big cheese plants would keep the nitrogen tank right in their factory. There was 10 of these 1cc vials on a stick. And once a month, this cheesemaker had to go meet the truck to get their nitrogen tank recharged. They had to pour it full of nitrogen because that would dissipate over a 30 day period. And so that was a good program back then.
That was a transition. That was the start of getting into the frozen cultures and everything. And as the industry grew and as these plants grew, their need for refinement as such, or bigger inoculation rates, made us go into the can size and finding frozen cans in that area, delivering them by dry ice. But it was the first step of getting into this type of program.
And what temperature do they keep these cultures now at the factories? These frozen cultures that they bring in, you know.
Normally your freezers, the small Kelvinators, used to keep right around -40. These big Kelvinator freezers today, they can go from anywhere from -80 to 100 degrees below zero. And the thing is, it's not really how cold it is. It's a
Just
matter
something to bring out.
it was a
Okay.
matter of whether the consistency, 100% run freezer, it does not fluctuate in rate. Just cannot store your real normal cultures in like an ice cream freezer where you would shut off and then it warm up and then it get down to a certain area and it kick in again and cool down. You cannot do that with these cultures.
Because it expands and contracts
The solids in the meat is in the can itself, therefore causing rupturing and injury to the cell. And usually what's happened is it slows down or it injures it to the point that it doesn't recuperate its normal activity.
See, we got one of those coolers there, and when it gets -49 or deviates a little bit, the buzzer goes off.
Yes.
And the electricity goes off or whatever, back to Marshall we go.
Well, that was the alarm system that was built into the freezer to alarm the cheesemaker that this was.
So it's a fluctuation that the contracting and expanding, breaking in the cultures and so forth, makes it slower, so on and so forth. It's really interesting. All right, now back to the Marshall. Ken, when you first came there, it was mostly just rennet, right?
It was rennet and cheese color.
Right. And cheese color. And what type of rennet did you have at that time?
When I came, the rennet was very short supply. And Marshall had very little rennet to sell. And that was the same problem for Chris Hansen and a lot of other ones. So back in the early 60s, what they had to do, they had to take mixed rennet with Pepsin. Half rennet, half
Okay,
Pepsin.
see, before the original rennet was what?
Yeah.
Just calf rennet.
Calf rennet.
And why don't you just explain that to either one of you, you know, what the calf rennet is? I know what it was back in my days, or my father's day, they took the calf stomach and some of them even they soaked it I even heard where they would put it in a kettle and stir the milk around for so many minutes.
yeah,
you know,
that's
so that
true.
they could-
Well,
And then eventually they soaked it in whey and so much certain
Took it.
times, and then they took the whey out of the rupture before they did. But go ahead.
basically, the rennet, as it says, comes out of the fourth stomach of a suckling calf. Now that's what they call, it is pure calf valve, or a stomach, the fourth stomach, or the fourth stomach of a calf. That is what we use as the purest type. Now, as the calf gets older, more of the rennet turns into a combination of pepsin, calf pepsin itself, which is another enzyme being produced in the stomach itself. So it becomes a part of the chymosin and pepsin combination. The younger the suckling calf, or the younger the stomach area, the more chymosin it has in the stomach itself. And as the calf gets older, it goes more and more to the pepsin area. Now, to a cheesemaker, what does this mean to you? It means that a lot of people would want more chymosin, or the younger the stomach, because they feel that the yields are better. But as the stomach got older and they got more and more pepsin, they were finding that the flavor aspect really came with the pepsin more so than they did the rennet. So that's how basically that's decided.
And Ken, what is the function of the rennet when you add it to the milk?
Coagulates the milk.
And are there other methods like citric acid? I mean, what you're saying is you put that rennet in and it thickens the milk, right?
The combination of the starter, starting to turn the milk acid, and then adding the rennet will coagulate the milk at roughly 88 degrees for 30 minutes.
And you depends on how much you add is how much you can put in.
But you mentioned the cottage cheese industry will use acetic acid. They call it direct acidification, but at the same time they don't use it as flavored cottage cheese either, as you would if you used a starter.
Now, one's an enzymatic coagulation and one is an acid coagulation. And completely different function, but they do basically the same function as an outsider would see.
Okay, then now, all right, now we got the calf rennet, and then we're getting into this pepsin. Where do we go from here? There's, we go into swine. Can you carry that a little bit?
Sure, when the calf rennet got short and there wasn't enough to go around, companies like Marshall, Hanson, Dairy, and all of them had to use pork pepsin, porcine pepsin, and use it half and half to stretch the rennet supply. And there were some cheesemakers that preferred to buy the rennet separately and the pepsin separately and mix it themselves, because some of them wanted 60% rennet in there and only 40% pepsin.
Do you find out that by going to the original calf rennet that you maybe get a better, like for this pepsin or the original rennet, calf rennet, a better flavor like for cheese that you keep for 6 months or a year? Or is that still just as like I use the original stuff and I get a better flavor, or
Well, I think
just your opinion?
Yeah, my opinion is that it was always left up to the individual cheesemaker to decide, and a lot of people believe that pepsin itself, maybe not porcine pepsin, but a calf pepsin,
That's what I'm talking about, calf.
develops a lot nicer flavor in association. But porcine pepsin, pork pepsin, had a little bit more bitterness, even though it was used, like Ken mentioned, as an extender. It did have a little bit more bitterness to the flavor, so that we had to watch it. A lot of cheese people that was going for the delicate flavors, like aged cheddars, would probably back off a little bit on porcine pepsin and go more to the calf pepsin.
John, Don owned his own cheese factory for 13 years, and he never used anything but calf rennet. And I think he'd tell you, because it gets better yield and better flavor
It pays for
cheese.
itself, yes.
To get the yield. Well, some of them still believe. I want you to interrupt here because I was going to catch you later. I want to get this rennet business here. Anything we're doing rennet. I want to go into microbial now. Or do we have anything else to cover in between the pepsin, the swine, and so on?
No, that pretty well covers it. I
Okay,
think.
tell me what microbial is. Explain that, will you?
Well, the microbial that Marshall sold was called Marzyme, and it was derived from Euchromehi fermentation, and our competitor Dairyland brought in a product from Japan called Emperase, and that was a Mucor. And we always felt that the Euchromehi was the better of the two.
And really, that microbial, now you're getting away from the animal rennet, right?
Mhm.
Explain that a little bit, just to kind of further clear.
Basically, when we say microbial, it's an extract that is taken off a mold extraction. When you off of the mold extraction, the enzyme that is produced during the mold fermentation. And this is where, when Ken was referring to Mucor, this is a specific mold fermentation. And the Mucor again, was another type of a mold, and each one of them produced a different enzymatic action and quite a.
What do you sell, what percentage versus microbial versus your animal rennet?
Ooh,
About, just a quick.
I would say back in those times, in the early 70s, it was not accepted very well. They extended as much as they possibly could. That's the reason why rent prices went up to $90 a gallon. People hung on as long as they could with calf rennet. And it got to the point of being economical and possible that when it got up to $90 to $100 a gallon, they had to look at the sources. And this is where microbial became popular.
Well, listen, I'm out. I got to turn it over.
Okay.
Doc, you want to clip her
A
there?
short intermission.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask,
We're going to get off the rent. I'm going to ask you that question again about what the percentage, and then we'll discuss that microbial a little bit more. In fact, I'll ask you another question here, ladies, and then and Ken, then you run the factory, and we'll get you into the making cheese and so on and so forth, and get Nelson Jameson do like we had. Yes.
You have to ask Don how he bought his first cheese plant, because that's very interesting.
Okay.
Very interesting how he bought his first cheese plant.
Okay. Well,
I want to know, John.
You have to wait.
Okay. You never know where this tape starts, so I do that about 3 times of the testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you think, well, gee, what are you doing that for? But a lot of times you don't start until the last one. So we'll keep right on and going here. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Well, here we are again, down here at Eastula, Monroe, Wisconsin, the wine room, Turner Hall. Today is November 19th, 1996, and I have over here Ken Woldt to my left, and Heiar and Norm Wood. And we've been discussing this rennet Marshalls that they work for, and we're going to ask you a few more questions, and then we're going to ask Don about his interest in cheesemaking and how he got to become important in this conversation, right?
Okay.
All right, we were talking about microbial, or Dr. Honey mentioned, Dr. Honey was going to audio this, or video this, for Historic Monroe Cheesemaking Center. And we were talking about calf rennet, swine rennet, and now we're talking about vegetable rennet, or as we call it, microbial rennet. What percent do you think today is microbial, either Don or Norm here, versus before? At one time it was all calf rennet. And I have to add this. Every time we'd have somebody would have either the Cheesemaking Association meeting or Marshalls or something, say the rent's going to go up. In the conversation, we said, "Oh, what do you mean? They got more cows all the time they milk, and they always tell us that the bread's good. They got no calf stomachs or nothing." I don't know where all them calf stomachs go. I think that they just giving us a line. This was the cheesemaker version.
Yes.
On the other side. And then, of course, I think, and then maybe you can say, answer this question: was the swine? Did you call it Pepsin? Would you say?
Yeah, it's porcine.
Porcine, all right. Would porcine been cheaper to manufacture versus the calf at the price of the demand for the calf stomach? So we had economics coming in here, right?
That's right.
So you said to the cheesemaker here, well, we got a rennet here that is a little bit economical for you to use, it can still do the job, right? Which means to thicken or coagulate the milk. Right? Okay, what percent do you think today is microbial versus porcine and the calf to just somewhere? I mean, which way are we tending to go?
Well, I don't think there's any porcine pepsin used at all today.
That's because of the kosher aspect of that.
Okay, I was going to bring that up.
The
Okay.
kosher aspect has limited the use of basically any animal coagulated, plus the fact that being porous.
Okay, that's what I wanted to bring up because I know we get all kinds of letters and we have to substantiate on a statement, a written statement that we do not use any animal rennet. And of course, we know kosher, which is the Hebrews and the,
Yeah, that was for the purpose of the whey, the byproducts of cheese making, not the cheese itself. It was for the byproducts for which you wanted to sell your whey powder or your whey protein. That was the instrument that seemed to manipulate everything in regards to going kosher. It's not the cheese itself.
So, like I said, and so today, really, there's would you say 50% or 60, 70% microbial?
No.
No, I would say that today, John, what's really taken over is the clone rennet, which we haven't even talked about. And I would say that
Well, let's get into that because I haven't really explored that. I'm just not familiar that much here.
because the porcine pepsin is totally out of the scene, and the calf rennet is slowly going out of the scene.
And you said down here, he's used calf when he made cheese. He never did deviate from that. He was stuck with the calf runner right straight through.
I didn't believe in that Pepsin stuff. The new clone rennet they have out now is a good product.
Is it?
Yeah.
You sell quite a bit of that?
Yes, we do.
And what percent sales do you think you sell?
How's
Your percent versus.
It's almost 100% clone rennet our sales. Maybe 90% clone and
I think that's pretty
and
close.
probably the rest is microbial.
Yeah,
We don't sell calf rennet, so.
Well, I'm now you're gonna get ahead of me here on this clone rennet here. We used to put in lemon juice, I think, sometimes, the citric acid there.
Was this a little direct acidification that you had prior to your
Just
coagulating?
a little bit of, one you
That's
make at
cheating.
home.
That's cheating,
The one you
John.
make at home, you know, to make out some cheese, you put a little lemon juice or whatever it is, you want to get it to coagulate or solidify, you know, right? Well, all right, who wants to carry the conversation on clone rennet here?
I can tell you a little bit about, Ken, I'll tell you a little bit about the reason why clone became popular, because it is kosherable product, first of all.
And kosher, we're talking for this, kosher is for more or less, kosher is a standard for the Jews, if they, you know.
Jewish aspect of the kosher
Yeah.
aspect of it. And the reason is that the calf rennet, as normal, cannot be a kosher product unless it has supervised slaughter. The rabbis have to be there in order to visualize the slaughter and to have reach Jewish codes. But what's happened is that there cannot be observation of all this slaughter. So basically, you cannot get kosher calf rennet in large degrees. So what they've done in researching is that they've taken the same enzyme out of the calf stomach and put it into a vegetable cell and produced this enzyme within a vegetable cell. And when reaching maturity, it bursts, and they can take this enzyme or extract it out of the vegetable cell and reproduce it, purify it, and this is what they call clone. And this pure enzyme is called kinesin. This is part of the cloning aspect that researchers really put into.
Kinesin is what I.
That's right.
Yeah, so I didn't realize it was.
It's a genetic,
Background, yeah.
yeah, it's unusual because what you're doing basically is taking an animal enzyme and producing it in a vegetable state of reproduction and extracting the enzyme and emulsifying it, purifying it and selling it back as the same functionality as true calf rennet does. And it gives you the same benefit like Don likes in his cheese as normal calf rennet. And that also solves the problem of the koshering aspect.
Can you add anything to that?
Well, John, the first company to get into the clone rennet, of course, was Pfizer. And their fermentation came off of E. coli. And they were the first ones in it, first ones to get approved. When they came out with their product, it sold for $85 a gallon. And of course, at that time, rennet was very high priced. I think rennet was about that price. But as the clone rennet came on the market, it forced the rennet price down, and then in turn, the clone rennet prices went down. And then, of course, Gisberkatas over in Holland got into it with their product, and of course Hanson's has their product, so we have 3 of them now.
Okay. Now, what other companies, okay, the other question I have, Marshall's was, what the original part of Marshall was who?
Well, Marshall product, originally Marshall was a gentleman that worked for Chris Hanson's out of New York. And he had the idea of coming to Wisconsin and following the mill. And everybody else disagreed with him, but he went ahead
About
and
what
ventured.
kind of time frame are we
This was
talking?
beginning of the century,
Beginning of the century.
just before the turn of the century. And he took his ideas and went to Madison or Wisconsin. And the industry did follow.
All right, now we got Marshall, and then who did Marshall sell out to?
Miles Laboratory.
And about what time frame was that? I just want to record some of these things.
Well, I'll tell you when it was. I started with Marshall in February 1966. Miles bought us out December 31st of that year, the very last day of 1966.
And then the next, who is it today, or what was it?
No buyer laboratory.
1979, Bayer Corporation out of Leverkusen, Germany, bought out Miles. And then they had a reorganization in 1988, and that's when I left Marshall. And since that time, and Norm can pick up the story.
A company came along by the name of Woldt, which is a French company, and bought Bayer, or Marshall products under Bayer, and transferred it back to Madison again, and that's where we are right now. They continue to use it, or use that name today.
And say that name again?
Woldt. It's RHONE-POULESC.
French company.
It is a French company,
So we went from America to Germany to
French.
French. It's quite a
Yes.
thing, although once again,
Well-
I can't even pronounce the name anymore. I
Well,
still
it's
call
true.
it Marshall.
It's true, but it gives you kind of an idea, John, of the international aspect where we are and the feeling of what's happening to the world today. Good typical of our company. It is, and we are really in
And
a
you
world
go
market.
world market.
We are in a world market, and we have to make the adjustments.
Okay, just one more quick thing here. Tell us about a little bit about the Marshall Seminar. It started about, what is it, 30 years ago?
Oh, yes, Marshall's Italian Cheese Seminar, which was started back, this was 34 years ago.
I think it was 1964, does that?
Yeah,
is that
something
about-
needs a bell, I'm somewhere in that area. This is what happens when you have half-timers. But it was started by a gentleman by the name of Stan Ferris. And at this time, there was a growing segment of the cheese industry after the war. And when the boys came back from Europe, they brought back the flavor of Italy, the pizzas and that stuff, and caused an increase in the demand for Italian-type cheeses. And from that point on, Stan Ferris recognized this growing segment and tried to unify the Italian industry, because at this time, they were basically made up of individual family members, and each family made their cheese and sold to the industry.
Some with a name behind that was
Oh, yes.
protected.
That's exactly right. They were
That's
very,
a kind of a
we
nice
say
word.
family names, I think that includes everything. But everybody was pretty dispersed. The one thing that they did lack, they kept a lot of the family secrets, is they couldn't unify to address a changing larger market. And what happened is that Stan recognized this fact and started to bring all the families together and saying, hey, we'll give you the technology to advance to a larger or higher state, but the seminar will be offered for you. And this is when we came out with the Italian, in fact, it was called the Italian Invitational Cheese Seminar, by invitation only. And we, all the Italian cheese manufacturers in the country and some of Canada came into Madison to have the seminar. This seminar continues today to be one of the longest endurance, probably not the word I want to use, but lasting seminars that we have. We've broadened it, we've gone into the specialty type cheeses now also, along with the Italian. But it has greatly helped the Italian industry expand in the United States, actually from the next extent.
And you're very instrumental, you're kind of kind of more or less in charge of it yet, right? On more or less shall we say, the promoter, not the promoter, but the.
Well, he's taking.
Why don't you say Ken? What word am I looking for Ken Woods on this?
Well, Norm is, he's still pretty much, he works, I think, with people down in, some people down in Indiana, is it Norm?
Yeah, Joe, yeah, we have a young lady that has instrumental, has come along and run this, put this seminar together. But basically,
But you lead all the discussions, right?
they,
You lead the
yeah, they
topics.
call me ringleader. I don't know if that's the proper terminology. I've been given a lot worse jobs, but I'm not going to discuss those here. We've held, basically, I've done exactly what Stan's wishes were, and it's to continue it and to upgrade it, and basically, I have taken a back seat on a lot of the things that are going on right now. But it's to there to promote it.
The 2 years still going, the instrumental one, just a little more, well, it's got that personality, you know what I mean? Hi there, hello there, whatever, so it goes with it. See, you can even talk with the Swiss because he uses his hands too. See? And while we're talking about seminar, we had was something I remember going to the first time. And the first one they had, God, it was very small at that time, as you said, it was an invitational only. And of course, there was then you had Italian music. First we had Swiss music there for a while, then they changed it over to what do you call
The
it?
accordion.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of the song, and all Italians sing it, you know. But anyhow, first they had the Swiss music there and the yodeling with Walter Burkhardt, and then I noticed it changed. And it was the night of, the night before, it was where you had Gemütlich night, camaraderie, spirit.
Social hour.
And then the next morning there they had a plate there with Roma seltzer, aspirin, Tom's, Firebig soda. I thought, well, my God. And they said, well, this just goes with cheesemaking. And they more or less kind of dressed casual, and there were an awful lot of Swiss there. I mean, like Cobalt down here, and of course even
Matt Fire.
Meyer from up there, and of course Warren there, and here in Monroe, the cheesemakers that we're making for Roy's Dairy, and golly, it was just more Swiss, quite a few of them, you know, we was talking. So we still call our cheese the Italian cheese with the Swiss touch, but there was a lot of Gemütlichkeit, a lot of partying there for the first ones, and then now I noticed it with people come in suits, and it's more international and so on and so forth. So that's kind of more or less the history of Marshall, and any stories you can tell me about Walter or anything that you know of, anything that he ever related to you on the cheese factory?
I can tell you a good story.
All right, so this is what I have.
Walter, I traveled with Walter about the first 2 weeks when he was preparing to retire. We went into this cheese factory. There's 2 young fellows working over the vat, and were they being sloppy about it? And Walter walked up to him and he scolded him. He said, "You fellas got no business making cheese." He says, "Cheese making is an art." He said, "You 2 fellas should be working in a rock quarry." He said, "There it wouldn't make any difference."
Is that right?
Yeah, never forget that.
And he could paint too. He has a
Yeah.
painting of that Wood Anders factory there. Well, very interesting. And today we have a French company, and we both are kind of semi-retired. And thank you for talking about Revit, which is one of the big things in cheese making. Now we're going to talk to Don here a little bit. And what do you think of this conversation listening to these fellows here? Don, it's kind
I
of
think done quite well, yes.
yeah. Well, I think you're familiar with everything, you know. Up to the kind of sound here, what it is, we call it, we read it. Now, where are you born, Don?
I'm born in Crawford County in southwest Wisconsin.
Oh, is that
On a
right?
dairy farm.
What town?
Mazika.
Is that right?
That was our home. That's where I went to high school.
Is that right?
So,
Well, I'll tell you what, my wife is from Steuben.
that's the end of the world there.
They call the river rats down there, Steuben.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I went up there, I thought I stepped back 50 years. All right, so he was born in a dairy farm and milked cows by hand? and
That's
everything?
right, my hand. Yes. We had 30 cows, milking night and day.
And we hauled the milk to what factory?
A little factory called the Grand Gray Cheese Factory.
And where was that at? Mazika or?
It was about 3 miles from the farm.
At town was he or out in the country?
Out in the country,
Out in the
yes.
country. You remember hauling with horses or anything?
No, we had a pickup.
Pickup.
Actually, my dad and the neighbor had a pickup together, and they hauled milk. They'd take turns hauling it, so they couldn't afford to own a pickup, so they,
It's pretty hilly ground up there.
Yes,
You
it
either
is.
farm the ridge or the bottom, right?
we were in the valley, right on the Wisconsin River.
Oh, right, that would be good. If it didn't flood.
No.
So, all right, well then, how did you get into cheesemaking?
I joined the Navy after high school, and then I got discharged from the Navy back in 1947. I needed a job. My brother had bought the Car Valley Cheese Factory up in Sauk County, and he needed a hired man, so I went to work for him. And they
The
said-
cheese factory there, back in Crawford County there, was making cheddar, right?
That's right. Most factories over in that area made cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese.
Yeah, and that was the real old 60-pound cheddar hook that they put it into back in those days.
Press.
Yeah, and pressed it up in the presses by hand.
All right, now you're in Sauk County. How did you ever get to Sauk County to make cheese?
That's where my brother had a factory.
Oh, okay.
And when I come out of the Navy, I needed a job.
And then you-
He needed a hired man, so,
And how did you get up there?
well, he had started making cheese, working in a factory making cheese, and Gordon Food Company needed somebody, they wanted, the Miller boys sold it out to him, and he bought it.
And they were located,
Where the Car Valley factory is today, it's up by Lime Ridge. It's still running at that factory, it's still running, yeah.
all right, then, they told me for sure to ask you about your first factory.
Well,
So you learned how to make cheese up there at the car
when I
factory?
worked there a year and a half, my brother sold it, so then I had to go too then, so, as the new people didn't offer me a job, and I went to work for my brother-in-law down in Platteville. It's selling a little factory called the Polar Cheese Factory. And I worked there about a year and a half, and they had a state inspector, I think a lot of people have probably heard of him by name, Cletus Gansher, he was pretty tough.
He was a southerner.
Yeah, he was.
I heard it.
I always-
got a long
I always-
reputation worse than that.
I always felt good about that because after I was there about a year, he stopped in one day and he says, "You've been making cheese for over a year and a half, haven't you?" I said, "Yes." "Well, I think you should have a cheesemaker's license." And he asked me for if I had a couple, $3, I think it was $2 or $3 on me. I had to give him so he could give me a license. I never took a test or anything. And about a week later, he came back and gave me my license.
Well, you had some awful run-ins with the farmers here. I don't know why they never run him out. I don't know.
But anyhow, from there, then my brother-in-law sold out, and I went to work for a factory in Cross Plains, Wisconsin. We made raw milk cheese there. That was quite interesting. We didn't even have a pasteurizer, see, making raw milk cheese. And
That's quite a thing, making raw milk
Yes,
cheddar.
it was.
You have to work it a lot of times at night.
that's right, the curd would come to the top and the weight go to the bottom. But anyhow, that factory burned down, and then I went down to Arena, working in the Arena Co-op, and I worked there about a year or so. And one day, Jack Meister was running the Gordon Food Company over in Richland Center. He stopped in and he said, "Would you like to have a cheese factory of your own?" I said, "Well, maybe. I don't have any money." He said, "Well, have you got $1?" And I said, "Yeah, I got $1." He said, "You got to have $1 down to make it legal." So I give him $1, and I got myself a cheese factory. Yeah, and they just backed me all the way, and in 3-4 years I had it paid for.
Oh, and if I may ask, to give an idea of what time, what percent, how much money would be involved to buy that, and what did you buy?
I bought that for $16,000, which is a lot of money back in 1954,
And
and
that-
4% interest.
Now, that was a can washer, 2 vats.
That's right.
2 vats, press.
And there was a pasteurizer, the old open type pasteurizer.
Over the top, yeah.
Yes, I had to replace that too about 3-4 years later with the plague. Yeah. It was
And just vats, like what size vats would you say?
They were 2 10,000-pound vats, and
That was more or less the normal trend.
that's right. That was a nice medium set. It was all canned milk, and it don't mean much nowadays, but
I still use that 10,000 pound, I do some figuring.
Yeah.
I always say 10,000 pound, I
Yeah.
have to figure this much.
That's 1,000 pound cheese.
Rather than,
Yeah.
rather than 12 or 13, or I go right back to that
Yeah.
10,000 and go from there. Yeah, that was kind of the standard.
Then I stayed there for 13 years, and some fellow wanted the cheese factory worse than I did, and I sold it to him. So he said,
What, now are we talking about 60?
that was 1966. I bought the factory in 1954, and sold out in 1960s.
Was grade A starting to come in there?
And bulk milk was starting to come. See, we still had the old vans, and we didn't have any bulk trucks then yet.
Did you deliver way back to the farm?
Yes, we did, and you know how that went, John.
Did you have a tank in front, or did you have one of those in the
No,
bottom?
no, we had it in front of the truck, and stinking tanks in the van, you know how that
It
went.
always leaked.
Yes,
Yeah, that was a thing in itself. But God, on them hills there, gee, I'll tell you that milk on the wintertime. Well, even the spring rolls.
yes, in 1959, one time, I did, one snowstorm, I didn't see any milk for 3 days. Yeah. We were just snowed in.
And how'd you make out of the cheese there?
Not very good, that milk coming in everything, every kind
It
of.
came from 2-3 days after.
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, this one, little
Yeah,
less.
they had it in the bathtub, someone did, you know. Unbelievable. They started-
Well, that's what you put up with, and this is what we want to talk about. We're talking about the holidays, not how everything comes in the snowplow today, or everything is.
But then I sold the factory to a fellow, and I needed another job, and that's when I went on the road as a supply salesman for Nelson Jameson back in
All right,
'66.
that's what I kind of want to explore now. What kind of supplies did you have at that time?
Well, we sold all the equipment and the media. That was the biggest share of our sales. And we also sold the chemicals, the washing soaps, and that sort of thing. And we sold the filter discs for the farmers. We sold to the cheese factory, so they resell the farm supplies, I should say that'd be. And we sold all the stainless steel fittings and pumps. Triclover was the big item for us at that time.
And what is the difference between then and now, if you would say?
Well, everything is so automated now. The equipment's so much bigger than it was then. You know, we'd sell bats for Damro, 12,000 pound bat, because that's a good sized bat. But now it's nothing. They get 40,000 pound double O's.
A double O is what? That's your vertical?
Upright, yeah, that's a vertical, yes, yes.
Which holds in, I say, almost a
45,000.
almost a trailer load full of milk.
That's right.
And,
But the plants back then, 20, 30,000 was an average sized plant. Anybody with 75,000, 60, 75,000 pound milk was a good sized plant back then.
well, you've seen a lot of factories close. Can you maybe describe some of that, where your route goes to some of these?
Well, in Crawford County, where I grew up, when I started with Nelson Jameson in 1966, I believe there were 28 cheese factories there, cheese plants. There's many there today, I know, in Crawford County. Not a one. They're all gone. The milk goes into the big co-ops have it all, or the big plants, Altos and Foremost Farms and Mid-Am, the MPI.
And your factories that you were both on are all?
They're gone. The only one left is Car Valley and the Arena Co-op is still, that's a Foremost Farm plant.
Which is the foremost one.
It's a co-op now.
Arena, didn't they make the Kojak there too there?
That's
Or
right.
out there for
That's right.
Peterson?
That's right.
And I suppose they probably still make the Kojak there, do they? Or-
They still do.
Which is the two, supposed to be.
When I worked there, we made 20 pound block,
Cheddar.
cheddar block, and we sold it to J.C. Burst, I believe it was. The 40, about that. Yeah. Pearl Thompson, a good cheese maker, he made good cheese.
And you're still on the road now, right?
I'm retired, but they keep me on as a kind of a PR guy or somebody, go out and entertain people and it's, once in a while I go to plants where they're having some problems and just
But
visit.
Nelson Jameson at one time maybe was just all of Wisconsin or just part of Wisconsin?
Originally, they started in Toluca, Illinois, which is
Oh,
south,
okay.
yeah. And they moved to Wisconsin, I believe in 19,
I think it's 49.
49 or 50, they moved to Marshfield. They had a branch warehouse in Richmond Center, which they opened probably back in 1960, something like that. That's where I worked out there. I managed that. And when I came there, there was another fellow there, but then he left, and then they made me the manager. They closed that up now, and they have one. They also had one in Green Bay at one time. They closed that up, and the only one they have left now is in California.
You ever had any trouble collecting from cheesemakers?
Yeah,
Or
that's- Some of them we didn't get money from.
No.
That was always a problem. Factories closing
Well, I
out.
imagine that was really a tough time between, like, say, from the 50s to the 70s, where all those factories closing. You know, some of them hung on there and hung on there and hung on there.
You know how that is, John. It's, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. That's
Scrub is always, if one person ever had to ask me what my life was in the cheese factory, I would say it would be like a storm in the ocean.
I'm either up here or, you know, just like this, like a wave. But it really makes it nice that you people come around, you know, to a factory, you know, where you used to have to drive to Monroe or drive Darlington to get supplies, and, you know, and here the truck comes, I think you come to our place, I think every other week. And now you have dry skin, that you're selling, dry skin powder.
Yes, they do. They sell it in California's powder, probably.
Yeah.
Just regular skin, straight skin powder.
Straight skin powder. I don't like to use the word powder because I always call it dry skin. Because we standardize, we put this dry skin milk into the cheese to get the percentage of fat down. There isn't too much fat on a pizza. And of course, everybody calls it powder. And so don't buy any cheese from Warren there, they put powder in there.
It's so what it really is non-fat dried milk.
Yes, not fat. And what else can you tell us? Any stories that these cheesemakers told you? Run away with somebody else's wife?
I'd rather not get into that, John.
But it has happened.
Oh, yeah. It seemed an awful lot of that down in northern Illinois, too. I used to cover northern Illinois, and there was more of that going on down there. I can't remember some of those fellows, that one fellow's name down there, he has something else. It's a factory, I forget the names of some of those factories down there.
John, you know, Marshall really relied on a company like Nelson Jameson back. And when I went to work in '66, because at that time, there were still, I think, about 900 cheese factories in the state of Wisconsin. And there were small ones, and we needed people like Don that could go around there every couple of weeks and deliver their supplies, because there was no way we could ship them out of Madison that way. So that we really relied on these people.
And Don, your first, what, you had this acid tester, right? It was a big thing. You know, you put in
Marshall acid test?
Acidometer.
acidometer that you sold a lot of them, and now it's pHs.
Yeah, now it's pHs, yeah, you don't.
pHs and
acid,
moisture test. So, what else can you see in the different phases between 30 years ago and today? Anything, I'm just trying to say what the transition of, you know, what it was.
You know, it's kind of something that we sell cheese dryers, and the only place you can get a good cheese dryer nowadays is out of Switzerland. No one here in the United States makes a good one. No one wants to bother making a little cheese dryer. They don't want to make the big stuff. So we buy our cheese dryers from Switzerland. A family make it. It's a family-run business over there. They make them. It's a good cheese dryer. We sell all the cheese dryers to USDA. They buy all their cheese dryers.
And the cheese dryer is the little plug that you
Try to
put in the cheese and circle around as a half moon, stainless steel. How long would you say, 6, 8 inches?
Well, they come in different sizes. You can get them short, you can get them big, long ones. They go in barrels. But the number 8 is what they use for cheddar blocks and stuff like that.
Anything else you need to talk about? A little joke or something?
John, I just want to say this. For me, the biggest change in the last 30 years is strictly in the size of these cheese plants. I was in one the other day, and they had 10 50,000-pound cook vats run by 2 people, pushing buttons and doing the work, and from there it went on over to tables. I mean,
So
to
you're
me,
talking like 2 million to 2.5 million pounds of milk a day?